Gary Costello. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm real good, thank you.
So, tell us who you are. Tell my viewers.
Um, who am I? Well, I'm a guy that likes to shoot. I started F class probably 15 plus years ago. I would say, yeah, 15, maybe 16, 17 years ago. So it was the early days of F class back in the day. So the likes of Larry, Jim Murphy, all those guys we were sort of in awe of back then. So, and I'm glad to say we still got them. So,
Yeah.
but we have lost a few of the good guys as well. So, I was looking up to those guys back then, like a lot of guys are looking at you, and various other people now. So,
At you. They didn't
well,
look at
yeah,
you.
yeah, well,
All right. Why? Okay. So, Gary, you were the 2009 world champion, correct?
yes, indeed.
So, let's first of all, how did you get into F class? Why did you get into F class?
Well, I started shooting when I was a kid, and in England, it's very, as you probably know, it's very difficult to own firearms. So, particularly when you're a kid, a teenager, the only thing you can shoot is an air rifle. And the UK has a very big air rifle following. There's a lot of good manufacturers that make very, very good and accurate air guns. So I saved up my my hobby money, my pocket money, and working and just doing stuff that I sort of needed to do to raise some funds. And I managed to buy myself a Viral air rifle, which is a German-made precision air rifle. And before that, I had some cheap thing from Spain or whatever it was. And I started shooting then. And 50, 100 yards, we had a small holding, small property with land. Mm-hmm. So I got the bug back then. I really wanted a rifle, but there was no way of getting one. And I sort of messed around with that until sort of mid-teens, when motorbikes and girls sort of got in the way, and unfortunately we moved, so I couldn't keep the gun, and that was that until probably late 30s, early 40s. And then I was in a position to have a little bit more time and maybe a bigger budget, and I managed to get my first full bore rifle. And really, the craziness started then. The desire for shooting small groups and accurate rifles just consumed me. So it went from your factory rifle to your semi-custom to your full custom to trying to fix and change and tinker and do all the stuff that we do now. And there was a small F-class group that shoots at Bisley, and I joined them one day with a totally inappropriate rifle, a 300 Win Mag.
Me too. That was my first F-class rifle.
And that thing was just evil. I mean, and I soon learned that was just not the way. And back then, 6.5 284 ruled. So I got one of those and persevered with that and had a bit of success here and there. Went on tour, got picked for GB in 2005, and then went to Canada completely green. I mean, green as grass, but met some guys there that I still know now. The Larrys, the Jims, the Alan Warners, all the old school, and some of the guys that aren't with us anymore. So, and that was an eye-opener to see, guys putting in 75, 13, 14, 15s when, I was lucky to get in the 70s was really quite eye-opening, and again, makes us look at what we did in the UK, because we just had like RPA quad locks and old agricultural style actions that weren't smooth, stocks that didn't track, the whole thing. We were 10 years behind. So there was a huge fast track from 2005 up to 2009. And the transition from 6.5 cal to 7 mil. And I think we actually in 2009, the US team, which Shiraz was captain, they all came over with 6.5 284s. And
that was Bob Bach. That's when Bob Bach was captain in 2009.
Was Bob captain?
Yep,
Okay.
Shiraz was captain in. Well, it was Bob Bach in 2009. After that, it was actually what was his name? God dang it!
I just recall Shiraz did a blog.
That's Odie. I want to say Odie. Was it Brian Odie?
No, could be.
And then he couldn't finish his deal, and then Shiraz took over as captain. But anyway, so back in 2009, it was Bob Bach.
Yeah. So these guys turned up with 6.5 284s, and we transitioned to 7s. I'd managed to get myself a Panda Action, which was made by Alan Warner, who I first met in 2005. So, and the 7 mil barrel was an afterthought. So it was like, hey, Alan, you know that 6.5 284 you're making? Can we stick a 7 mil on? And he did. And of course, that was the first thing I decided I want to shoot. And we did well with that. I mean, the big difference, obviously, at Bisley, we pair fire, the winds aren't kind. So that extra speed and extra BC was a huge advantage. I mean, I'm not saying that there was any better shooters there. I just think we knew the range, and we had an advantage ballistically and also with local knowledge.
Well, I think because you knew the range, you knew you needed a big gun.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's oftentimes, oftentimes they call it home range advantage, but a lot of it is not just knowing the range; it's knowing how that you are undergunned with a 6.5 against that range. And most people, again, if you only have experience shooting in Phoenix or Raton or any of those places, which can be pretty windy, but it's also can be very calm. And then you go to a range like Beasley that can be just hellacious from what I hear. I've never shot there, but I hear it can be downright intimidating. It's at some point you go, well, the 6.5 is just not going to cut it, right? And that's obviously what you encountered.
Yeah. I mean, we all like 6.5 because the recoil and the handling, but you put a 7 and a 6.5 together at 1,000 yards at Bisley, and there's only going to be one winner unless you are an absolute wind god and the conditions allow. But even still, with that, the guy with the 7 is going to stay inside you all the time. So that was sort of the trade-off, accuracy, ballistics, and maybe not accuracy even, because I don't think a 284 against a 6.5 284 has any disadvantage at all. I think the accuracy is inherently good for both.
So if I remember correctly, you used a 7 by 270 WS, right?
Yeah, I did.
So that was the early days when you went big or you went home.
Well, I think the good thing about, the thing that I managed to achieve, which a lot of people still don't, and mine was just a Hummer. The barrel was unreal. I've never, ever had a barrel like it since. Apart from recently, I've got a couple of really nice 30 cals, but 30 cals are that much more tolerant and easier to tune as far as I'm concerned. Right. If you're going in the Magnum class. Now, that barrel was a Bart line, and I didn't realize how good it was until, probably a couple of weeks before at team training, when I came off with a 75 12 13, and I thought that was easy. Actually, how was that so damn easy? And those barrels, they just seem to hang in there. I don't know, and it was true all the way through the competition. But what I will say is, I scared myself to death the day before the World Championship, because as a team, I was part of GB, and we all went down to the short range to zero our rifles and chronograph them, just to see if anything had changed. And we put a quarter wind drift on or whatever else. And this thing was eating the target up, but I couldn't believe I was getting like 20, 25 ES. And I was like, oh my God, I'm destroyed. What's happened? So there was nothing I could do. Ammo was loaded. The gun was just shooting sub quarter, and it was like, okay, let's just see. And it made zero difference. And I think if it's a good barrel and the node is good, I think you can get away with more ES than you'd like. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying I think you have to be careful you don't kill it before it's even been tested.
Well, so I don't know if you know, but what I always like to say is, when in doubt, believe the target.
Yeah.
Forget everything
me too.
else. One of the 284 Shihane, my first barrel. Obviously, I had never shot a Shihane before. As you, I came from the 6.5 284, and that barrel was just really, really good. And I just thought it was the Shihane, but it turned out it was the barrel. And exact same thing happened to me. I had just set a record at Bayou Rifle Club where I shot, and this is back in, I'm gonna say 2012, something, early days. Right. I like to call it the early days of the 7mm, because back then very few people had moved to the 7, and we're finally making the move. The 180 hybrid was a new bullet. People were just now talking about annealing ammo. It was all the early days of what we know now as what F-class is. And this thing was shooting amazing, and I did not own a chronograph at the time. Okay, I developed the load. And long story short, I borrowed a chronograph from a friend because I wanted to see how good this load was. And my extreme spread was 35. And then I'm sitting there going, do I change it? And then I go, but it shoots so good, I'm just going to leave it alone. But I understand exactly what you're saying. You're torn, right? You're like, I see the target, but the chronograph tells me it's not supposed to shoot. But at some point, you just have to believe the target.
Well, how many times have you put a string down and through your lab radar or your e-target, and you see a shot and you think, damn, that's 25 foot per second or 30 foot per second different, and it goes exact waterline. There's no deviation at all, and you sort of think, how did that happen? Now, there's other factors that you have to take into consideration, and then if you've got a not so good load, that 30 plus foot per second drops you right out the bottom.
So did you see that 1.25 inch or whatever it was that I shot at 1,000 yards? Did you happen to pay attention to my extreme spread for that?
I didn't see that. No.
I posted it, but most people didn't look at that. Anyway, it was 19. My extreme spread was 19 on that group.
Wow. Yeah. So there we go. We've both done the same thing, and we only really know about it now because we're talking to each other. So
exactly. Yeah. But I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that chronographs are not 100% accurate.
No.
So
particularly the e-target ones.
Those
I found some variations at destination. So I tend to take them with a pinch of salt.
Oh yeah, correct. So day before the World Championship, you see your extreme spread is not lining up with your groove, but you, at the end of the day, you believe the target, and on you went to the World Championship.
Yep. And you want to hear about that, the World Championship?
Of course. Okay. My goodness. So, of course, I want to hear about it.
So, a few interesting facts. I was staying on Bisley, and the accommodation on Bisley is quite difficult to get, particularly during a World Championship. So I was sharing a hut with a friend of mine, and he snored like a chainsaw. So I got hardly any sleep the day before the start of the World Championships. Not ideal at all. So first off, I've got a load that's got an ES of possibly 25, 30, and I'm thinking, oh, damn, this is not going to end well. And then I'm wired. I am totally wired. I mean, I hardly slept. So first morning, I'm sat on the range at the first distance, just trying to learn something. And I sat on one of the golf buggies, and I spotted some flags that actually looked very interesting. And the wind was coming from left to right, and I was looking through my spotting scope at some guys shooting, and I noticed these flags were absolutely telegraphing the change. I could see when they picked up, guys went out right. When they dropped off, guys went out left. So I actually just followed that group of flags for the whole day, and I came off with one down, I think, one off for the whole day.
Okay.
And you know that 1 point, you know where I dropped that? Have a guess where I dropped that. 800 yards.
Short range, short range.
Yeah, 800 yards. And
it's funny how that happens. But once it happens, you kind of relax, right? Because you're tense.
Well, I dropped 2, but what happened was I was shooting with Jeff Cochran, and we were on this target, and they pulled it before I shot. Okay. So it went a 3-ring high, and he was gracious enough to agree that they'd done that. So I took another shot.
Okay.
So that was back in the V. I'd shot Vs all the way through 800, and but one leaked just out on the right, and that was that. I kicking myself, but luckily I stayed clean.
Yeah.
And I had a high V count, and I was clean. So those group of flags just were, I mean, it was unreal. It was like a pendulum. Mm-hmm. But the barrel was a Hummer, and everything was working for me. I just got a new March scope. That's when March actually just launched internationally, and that was through Kelbley's back in the day. So I had to import it myself. I was nothing to do with those guys back then. Mm-hmm. And that was great. That was a whole different world from the BR type Night Force that we used to have. And it was turrets I could read, because I used to die a death with the vernier turrets on the old Night Force BRs. I mean, oh man, they were. Do you know what? I had it for a week and it had to go. But don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Night Force here. I mean, I had NSXs and I had all sorts of other which had clear, readable turrets. But that BR turret was just my own personal nightmare.
6 MOA per revolution, which was very confusing.
With 8th click, and you just confused the hell out of you. Anyway. So that was first day. Second day, a similar thing. The wind was coming from the same direction. Flags were doing what they were doing, and I managed to. I was leading, and Larry and I actually had the same score on the 800-yard ag. So we ended up with a shoot-off.
Okay.
Which was really cool, actually. And I never did a shoot off in my life, and I've never done one since, actually. But as Larry was the guest, he could choose what distance we had our shoot off. And you know, a shoot off in ICRA rules is the first guy to drop points, basically.
Right.
So Larry was shooting a 6.5. And I was asked what distance, and I said 1,000 yards, of course. So Larry said, no, I don't want to shoot 1,000 yards. I want to shoot 800 yards. So he's the guest. So we all run down to the 800-yard point, and there's a big crowd of people. And we can choose a guy to help us set up and whatever. And Larry was first off, and I think he went in with a V and a 5, and I went in with a V and a 5. And I think his third shot he dropped. Mm-hmm. It was a pickup from the right, and I saw it, and I went in the V. So the next shot he had a 5, then I had a V. That was it. I won the shoot off. Mm-hmm. But you know, to have a shoot off in the World Championships with Larry Bartholomew was was an awesome experience, and I couldn't even talk afterwards. It was probably one of the highlights of the world, and there was a whole group of people sort of wondering what's going on, what's he shot, how's he done it. So luck was there as well, and I did see, Larry shot first, I shot second. It's really, at the end of the day, it wasn't a follow your spotter time. There was real wind. And it was just knowing Bisley and knowing how much wind is going to put you out, basically.
Right.
So, and then second day, all good until the last 1,000 yards. And that was horrible. I mean, and I lost 6 points on that distance because it was typical Bisley, hot weather, high sun, and really difficult wind. And when that sun gets high, that wind really pushes through. And it's very difficult to identify the let-off because it's running so strong. And even just a small, couple of mile an hour difference will put you in the 3 ring, or the pickup will put you in the 3. And I think at that time, I didn't know where I was, and I didn't know how many points I was ahead because everything was happening so quickly. But at the end of it, I thought I'd thrown it away. I thought that those 6 points that came off, and then I came off, and one of the guys grabbed me and threw me up in the air and said, "You've won." I said, "You what?" And I think it was 9 points and 36 V-balls, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big margin. So,
you didn't have to
sometimes
shot. You didn't have to take the last. You didn't have.
I didn't need to. No, I didn't need to. But I came off feeling like the worst feeling in the world after leading all the way through. And I did that just recently at the Euros. I was leading all the way through until the end, and the 1,000 yards got me. But I wasn't 6 points clear this time. I was only a 1 point or and some V's, and guys, 6th, 7th place, only 2 points below if they shoot good. So never give up on a windy day at 2 and 20 at 1,000. You've got to be on it and lucky.
Well, at the 2017 World Championship, I was 19th place until the last string of the day.
Yep.
And that shot me all the way up to 5th place. Because I did good when it gets real windy.
That was Canada, wasn't it?
Canada, yep.
Yeah. I got destroyed. I was clean on the first. I went in the first day clean, and then I got totally. There was one detail there, and the wind was just horrible, and I must have dropped 10, and I came off thinking that's my World Championships finished, and I never got back. That was it.
It's horrendous when that happens because it doesn't take much. The guy, it's especially at the World Championship, the guys are so strong. The shooters, not the guys. There's guys and women there that are just so strong.
Yeah.
And like you said, you drop 5 or 6 points and
you're done.
It's over. But
you come off with a 75-12 and you think I did good. You're 35th. Well, you're lucky to be under 40 in the run.
Yeah.
And
so for those that don't know, a 75-12, it's 5 points. We shoot 15 shots, so the highest score you can shoot is a 75, and so that's a 1 MOA target. But inside the 1 MOA target, we have a half MOA target, which is a V ring, and those are used for tiebreakers. But what he said, a 75-12, that's 75, which is a perfect score, but 12 of those 15 landed in the V ring, which is an excellent score. But as Gary said, at the World Championship, if you shoot clean with 12 X's or V's, you're lucky to make it on the first page. Everybody shoots so strong. I mean, it is the World Championship. In Raton in 2013 at the World Championship, I shot 13 at 800, and my scorekeeper says it's gotta be a medal. That's gotta be a medal, and I said no, not at the World Championship. And I think I was 29th or something.
Yeah, I shot 12 and thought I did good, and then I don't think I was even 30th.
Yeah.
So but
Matt Davis. Let me tell you about Matt Davis right quick. He shot 14, and I think that put him in 6th place.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I did at 800 in the Worlds on the first day was I had a 5 and a V, and I didn't convert.
Wow.
I didn't take them, and luckily I was 2Vs in, because I knew V balls were going to be important. And the Euros we've just had, I had a 75-14, and you know what my last shot was? A 5. Mm-hmm. I dropped my last shot. It was so close. I didn't drop it. It leaked out. And that would have been a maximum 75-15. And that was just, one of those things.
So you win the World Championship. What happens then? I mean,
it all goes downhill.
Well, what I mean by that is now all of a sudden everybody knows who Gary Costello is. Number one, right?
Yeah.
Does that add more pressure?
Oh, it's awful. It's awful, because you are the main target, and as you know, things have to be right to win. And just because you won on one day doesn't mean you can win every day. And everybody wants to, you could just be out testing, practicing, doing whatever, or not even have time to get your load development right, because you grabbed a gun, you grabbed some ammo, you want to shoot a match, and I beat the world champion. So I get it, I understand it, but it's hard. And I will say that to anybody out there that wins a major competition. You are a target, and you will get people, you'll have a cross on your back or a circle on your back, and they'll say, I beat this guy and I beat that guy. But ultimately, you've got to win it on the day. You have to be there, and don't let it get to you. It got to me, and of course, my Hummer of a barrel didn't last. It lasted 1,600 rounds of Magnum, which was amazing. But once that went, I didn't have another one for a while, and I think I changed some things which weren't for the better, and work was really hard, and I did okay. I won some stuff. I think the following year I won the GB Championship, the league, and but nothing really crazy. Didn't do well at the Worlds, and you sort of think, that's it. I've had my time. But you just have to keep carrying on. There's so many different changes and improvements, and you can improve yourself by just experimenting and listening to people. The more you listen to guys with experience, and I know you emailed me and said you've interviewed Speedy and Jack Neary. Those guys are way up there. There are, Speedy especially. I don't know Jack, but he's got more knowledge than I would ever wish, or not wish. I'd wish to have his knowledge, but he knows more than I'll ever know, and that's just so interesting.
Oh, well, that's what got me into doing these talks. Exactly what you said. You got to talk to people, and I understand that, and I'm always willing to learn. And every time I have a conversation with somebody, I might pick up, depending on what level you're at. You may pick up a little bit or a lot, or and I realize that. And of course, every time I talk to Speedy lives 35 minutes from my house, so I stop by his shop every now and then. And one day I just decided to pull out the camera, and
I watched it. I watched every minute of it,
and it didn't. It was about 40 minutes, and that's the kind of conversations we always have. And I thought, you know what, I need to do this, and I told him, I said, boss, I need to do this more often, because one day you're gonna be gone, and all we're gonna have behind is whatever you're willing to share with us now, whatever. And so now I took it onto myself to start capturing as many moments as possible, because one day I'm going to be gone. You're going to be gone.
Yeah. We'll be gone. Yeah. And you just got to have your ears and eyes open and take on board things you think are worthy, and ignore the bullshit and the stuff that you hear, because there's always stuff that isn't worthy. and you just need to decide for yourself whether it's worth changing or persevering with what you're doing. I mean, I persevered with 30 cal, contrary to what the ballistics tables say and what other guys say, and I've found that to work very well for me. I'm not saying it's for everybody, because the gun handling is the big problem. But you know, and I do shoot 7 as well. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you get the gun handling right, and I like the fact that I don't have to change too much and tinker too much. I like it all to be the same all the time.
So I keep hearing that from everybody, which is something I've been doing for a very long time. I have 2 rifles; they're identical. If I change one thing on one rifle, I had to change it on another one.
Yeah.
You know, I used to have Bix and Andy triggers. I went to the Flavio Fare triggers, and once I liked it, I had to change it in the other rifle. It's even those minute things, but everything needs to be the same to be consistent, right? So
I have all the same stocks. I don't shoot any stock that's different, and that took a while to do. And only 2 types of action. You know, I only like 2 types of action. So, you know, and they're all right bolt, left port, because that's how I shoot. So, I think don't change too much, but be willing to change things you think or have tried to work.
So you win the world championship. You're the almighty Gary Costello, and now you have a target on your back, right?
Yep.
So you're preparing for the next world championship, where you have to defend your title, and that is 2013 in Raton. That's when you and I finally met.
Yep.
And what is that like? What's the preparation like going to the world championship now, knowing that now you're going there to defend your title?
I mean, we as a team made some mistakes, and first of all, it was cartridge choice. We didn't really know Raton, and you know, what is it, 6,000, 8,000 feet up, 6,000 feet,
7,000.
Yeah, so that air is a lot different to our sea level, and even a slow 284 is going to give you much better ballistics than you would imagine. So we took magnums. We ran them too fast. We didn't take into account the temperatures. Albeit there was a team sort of recce trip, which I think really didn't do us much good. So yeah. Loading for a hot country when, you know, we're all in the north and we're not used to shooting above sort of mid-20s, you know. What's that? That's 75. I mean, a hot day in England, 75 to 80 degrees.
Yeah.
Albeit I shot in mid-90s a couple of months ago at the Bisley Imperial, which was awesome. But and I'd learned my lesson. You know, I'd learned all the mistakes that I made in the previous years, you know, powders, speeds, you name it. It was wholly different. So we didn't do well. We didn't do well as a team or as individuals.
So you guys, not only are you the world champion, Great Britain is the world champions as a team, correct?
At that time, yeah.
So in 2009, you guys clean house. You guys took everything except the Rutland Cup, because I'm pretty sure the U.S. got that. But
they did, yeah.
But anyway, so Team GB gold medal in Beasley. You get the gold medal. Now you guys have to come to Raton to defend.
Yep.
Totally different elevation.
Yep.
And it's in July, if I remember correctly. July something, September, in Raton, New Mexico, which is hot.
And cold.
Well, cold in the morning, hot.
Exactly.
You had to have a gun with a really wide node,
and you had to use powder that really was tolerant. You know, we weren't used to the 4.350s and the, you know, the shortcuts, and well, we were used to shortcut, but you put that in a Magnum, it's going to have an effect. And because we're sort of northern and European, Vidivori was always the choice, the powder of choice, because imported powders weren't freely available. So, and again, it was just local knowledge, advantage. Yeah, and yeah, and you know that 11 o'clock onward wind from Raton that comes around the berm from the left and swirls around. You know, we hadn't seen that before, and you know, string shooting again. We shoot pairs.
Yeah. So that's the other thing about the magnums that you guys shoot. You guys shoot pair fire, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is what makes the magnum work.
I think most of the 7 magnums, yeah, I'd argue the 30 will take it because I've done it, but not too hot. You can't push it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The 30, I used to shoot a 30, and yeah, it can take it, but you can't shoot as fast as the guy shooting a 284 or a 7, because when the conditions are calm, I mean, those guys can just shoot. They can rip them down there with a 284.
Oh, it's a complete art form. I was in shock, really. I mean, to lie next to, I see a couple of guys. Who is
the most notorious is Gosnell, David Gosnell.
And Bob Siebold, I think. I watched Bob shoot.
Yeah, Bob Siebold. I mean, everybody.
I mean, man, that was. I mean, it was like 2.5 minutes, and he was done. I was like, I'm on my 3rd, 4th shot. You know, we're trying to read the wind. That's what we're trying to do, and of course, that doesn't cut it. We didn't know when to stop, when to start, and string shooting for us was a whole different world.
Which is pair fire for us is a different world, right?
Yeah.
So that's and that's the thing about a world championship. You're gonna shoot as is dictated by the hosting country.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you like pair fire, like I said, we don't ever pair fire. We're changing that with V2 finale.
With V2, which I think is great. I think that the format of that is great, and you're fighting against the guy next to you with the same condition. You're not 5 hours later at a different detail, a different weather, a different world, a different planet. You know, you are shooting at the same time, which I think is awesome. And
so pair fire. So you guys come to 2013 to the World Championship. You guys are the reigning champions, team and you. And now you guys are having to deal with Raton, with the heat and the cold, with the elevation, with the range that you don't know. And Raton is bipolar. It can be very calm.
It's a great description.
It's very bipolar. It can be so dead calm in the morning and even in the late evening. And you think, if you start shooting in that condition, you just think, oh my God, this is going to be easy. And then about midday, right after lunch, it's just, you don't want to deal with it. It just gets horrendous. And the mirage is so terrible. So now you guys have to deal with this. And you guys have these really super hot rodded magnums that you have to pair. Now you have to string fire. And now you see the guys like they described Bob Siebold, where he's just ripping them down there.
Machine gun. Yeah.
Machine gunning, and he comes off the line clean, and you're sitting there on your 3rd shot not knowing what to do. And the guy just came off the line clean. How does that impact you?
It hurts. there's nothing else you can do apart from go, wow. I mean, that's not we don't shoot like that. We have no necessity to shoot like that. I've got better with e-targets personally, but I'm not a machine gunner. I like to see the condition. I like to read the wind, and we need a little bit more time purely because of that's what we're set up to do here. But I mean, we've learned. I mean, we've learned a lot, but it's a hard thing to walk away getting your ass kicked, quite literally. And they were just better than us. Simple. In the conditions, at that range, and knowing what you guys do, string shooting in America, it's impressive. Okay, so you have a string shooter come shoot pair fire. Now, that's when things get interesting, because you've got to wait probably 2 minutes more, depending if you're electronic or a manual target. But and there's 45 seconds to take the shot. So let's say we have different targets to you. Our targets are all old, with old sort of 1950s, 60s frames. They're not the super light, one-handed, pull them down targets like Raton. So they take a little while. So it could be up to 2 minutes per shot, maybe 1 minute, 1.5 minutes. So the wind can change a lot in 1.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we try and keep our eye on the condition all the time and let the shot off as quick as we can, but also taking into consideration what else is going on around us.
Yeah.
But 2013, we flew home fairly dejected, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, and so you guys get through Raton. It was not a good year for you guys.
Yep.
It was just, it's like you said, so you can't win them all, right? So now you get through Raton. Now you guys have more experience in the world stage, right? And then 2017 Canada, right? Now you're back to pair fire.
Yep.
It's not as hot. The range is it's still a difficult range, but it's a different range. What was the strategy then? Did you guys, after 2013, did you guys give up on the Magnums? Did you guys change the strategy? You guys shit canned all the Magnums.
Well, we did. We had a team sort of plan to shoot 284, which was okay, but I was shooting a 300 then, and I was doing really well with it because I shot the previous year in Canada, the Spirit of America national, Canadian Nationals, and they do a Spirit of America section. And I think I placed fourth or fifth in that. I had a good time there and won some medals, and always like to go back because you meet old friends, and I like the range. I like Connaught quite a lot. It's a humid Bisley basically. Mm-hmm. With different attributes, but it is a similar sort of thing. And flags that lie a lot.
Yeah, you have that everywhere.
Yeah, and the thickness of those flagpoles, I didn't even work that one out until the second year I ever went there. So yeah, we had a 284 strategy, and some guys still took, because they couldn't change, their guns that they were actually happy with. And I kicked myself because one of our guys placed second, a guy called Paul Sandy from Scotland, and he stuck with his 300, and he did really well. And I'm not saying the gun won that position, but he was comfortable with that, and he shot it forever, And like me and my 300, I was my second year or third year with the 300. So the 284 did okay. I did better in Canada than I did in Raton. I had a few medals and a few other things, but that one detail killed me. Like I said, I got caught in a situation with the weather was horrible, and 10 points gone.
Yeah,
at 1,000. Probably wouldn't have been 10 with the 300, but it still would have been more than I'd wanted. So that I was doing well. I was one down all day, and I thought, I could do okay here, and it wasn't to be. So again, it wasn't quite such a surprise because we've been to Connaught before, and we knew how things can change. How the rain comes in there, and everything sort of goes very humid, and the mirage is horrible. So, but yeah, we walked away again, not doing quite so well. So, again, you try and learn by it. You try and improve on it, and come back for more.
Right. So 2017, how did you end up at the Worlds on the final standings?
Midway, nothing.
Yeah. It's strange, right?
25th or and that hurts to say 25th when you've been first, but
yeah,
it's just that I had a good shoot all around apart from that one match, and that was it. Game over.
Yeah, yeah, that's what happens. I mean, you can't do anything about it, right? Just
Nope,
just
nope. You're done.
just wait
Go
another
and enjoy
20
it.
years.
Try and learn something else while you're there. Make the most of it, and look at what you could change or what you could improve. And that's, I think, the only way to improve in life. I mean, you've got to identify what you've done wrong and fix it.
So 2017, now you're on the 300, and now from there you just stuck to the 300. Is
Mm-hmm.
that correct?
Yeah.
So what led you to a 300? Because you started with a big seven. Uh,
Um, because we're shooting magnums, trying to get the big sevens to settle and to behave became quite frustrating for me. I was getting good, I was getting bad. 2017 was 284 time, and I liked the 284. I did get on pretty well with it, and I've still got one. But I got on much better with the 300, the WSM, just purely because it's got a big tolerance, a big accuracy node. It's a bigger hole, less pressure, but it can hurt you. And my first one didn't have any recoil absorption, and I just persevered with it. But I did have a headache after a week in Canada. So I changed some things then and spec'd up some new stocks, and some rad came around about that time, and managed to tame the beast a little bit, and just stuck at it. Like you stuck with 284. You find something that you think you can make work, and it's been pretty good for me since then, since sort of 2020, 2021 onwards, 2019 onwards, actually. I won the British Championship again for the third time, and fingers crossed this year for the fourth time. So really, consistency has been the main aim, is to get your scores, in the we would say the 70s, above anything above 70 at 1,000 on a windy day is going to keep you up there. So no train wrecks.
right. So obviously you talk about learning, right? You have to learn along the way. What has been, if you could pinpoint the one thing that you say, this literally changed everything for me? Is there such a thing?
There's probably quite a few things that you got to get out of the mindset that velocity and BC will win, because it doesn't. The only thing that wins is accuracy and precision, and consistency. So again, this is probably more for the guys in Europe and the UK that look at what they can achieve on their ballistics program compared to 100 foot per second slower. It's got to be done in real time. It's got to be matched. I've been beaten by 6 mils, 6.5 mils, you name it, because they were more accurate than my rifle at the time. Hopefully not so much now, but an accurate rifle is always going to prevail if the guy behind it can steer it more or less in the right way. And I think, as we've touched on, never be complacent, never think you know it all, because you don't. You're only scratching the surface. There's so many things that you can change and try and improve on. And I don't mean go out and experiment. I mean, just look at what the guys are winning with. I don't say copy them, but there's a reason they're winning. Were they winning the year before? Maybe not. Maybe they've got an absolute hammer of a barrel, and it's just having an open mind, I think, is the way to go forward in competitive shooting. And don't be afraid to change things. There's always going to be a percentage here or there you can improve on with something. Rear bag, front rest, low development technique. I mean, your development, your low development thread on accurate shooter. I mean, that was groundbreaking, really. Because guys weren't doing that. They weren't picking the node that was consistent. They were picking the one hole that was the fastest possible speed they could get.
Right.
And then tuners. I mean, tuners have come around. That's another evolution. We're talking about what would I do, but you know, the things that have been introduced, which you have obviously been responsible for, has changed everybody's perception of accuracy and how things actually improve. And you look at the firing point now in the UK or Europe now as opposed to 2 years ago, there's tuners everywhere. Whereas before, very rare. I was the first guy to get a tuner.
Yep.
In the UK on an F-class gun.
Let me tell you my tuner story from 2013 at the World Championship.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I first chambered my first 2 barrels. I learned from Speedy, and I said, I'm going to do my own work now. And I chambered 2 300 WSM barrels. I brought them out there, and the one I had, it was an absolute hammer. It just shot so well. And when I was loading all my gear in the truck, I thought I should take that other one. And I thought, I don't need it. I only ran 100 rounds through it just to fire form some brass. I don't even have a load for it. I ended up grabbing it, throwing it in the truck. I go off to Raton. During the Nationals, I just could not get that barrel to shoot. I could not get it to shoot. And I fought it the whole Nationals, couldn't get it to shoot. So then I'm having to think. I'm like, what am I going to do now? I said, well, I do have that other barrel. I don't have a load for it. All I have is loaded ammo for the first barrel. But I do have a tuner. Maybe I can tune it with that. And that's what I did. I changed barrels, and all I did was tune it with a tuner. And I got some medals at the World Championship. I think I ended up 25th at the Worlds, my first World Championship ever. But the tuner saved me. It literally saved me. Otherwise, I probably would not have even shot the World Championship because, I mean, the gun, you know how it is. It's frustrating when you have a gun that can barely hold the 9 ring.
But you're just fighting something. You're just trying, you're just waiting for it to go out in the 9 ring or the 4 ring. You're just expecting it. And that messes with your head anyway, because you're expecting it to go out. And when is it going to go out? And it's more likely that causes just as many problems as the actual rifle or the load itself. Excuse me.
So I asked Jack Neary this question. Can the best shooter in the world win with a bad rifle?
No.
You can only...
Did he say no?
He said no.
I haven't seen that interview, and I keep meaning to get some time to actually watch it, but I could.
You just can't. You just can't.
No.
It's impossible. He said, if you don't have that feedback, well, I'll let you watch it. But if it's not responding to the best shooter in the world knows what to tell the rifle to do. But if the rifle's not doing what it's doing, it's pointless.
You get to know it's going to be a V or an X before it's even come up. You get that confidence out of a barrel that just hums, and when you don't have it, it's like, you know, it's like a drug. It's like cocaine. I mean, not that I know what cocaine is, but it's just an addiction that you need that accuracy to be able to steer the gun in the right place.
Have you ever shot a clean, but were not happy with the rifle?
Yeah. So,
yeah, this is something that most new shooters don't understand. I did that one time. That's when I was transitioning to the 300, and of course I'm trying different bullets and different everything. And I shoot a clean, and they said, "Oh man, good job! That thing hammers." And I'm like, "No, it's just not crisp." They're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I shot a X at 9 o'clock, so I moved over towards 3 o'clock on my aim point, about half, quarter MOA, just enough to put it in the center." I said, the next time I shot a 10 on the other side, on the other side of my aim point. I said, so I come in and then I shoot and then it still stays over there. I said, that rifle is just not shooting very good. They said, but you just shot it clean. I said, when I'm happy with the rifle is when I can move my aim point a quarter minute, and
it goes there,
moves a quarter minute. I said, that's a good shooting rifle, and it's just one of those things that until you have one, you don't understand it. It's how crisp you can make minute adjustments. You put a click in, which is an eighth MOA, and then you see your group shift.
Yep. Absolutely.
Just one click, and you see a shift on the target at 1,000 yards. It's but that's what we all trying to do, right?
Exactly, and as a lot of people don't realize, they all look at the vertical in their target and they want to get rid of it. But as Speedy, this is Speedy's words. I mean, this isn't me. There are loads out there that give you a group from left to right, not from up and down. And you think, look how flat my gun is. Yeah, but it's from one edge of the target to the other. Now, you need experience to know that actually your gun might be flat, but it's actually shooting that way, not vertically.
Jack and I touched on that subject about the wide flat group. He calls it a weather report.
Yep.
He gives you a weather report.
Yeah.
It just
yeah, Speedy does too. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is one of those groups that it's just so, for an inexperienced shooter, it's death, because they'll chase it. They say, "Oh, look how short."
Yeah, you chase a dragon. Yeah.
And it's just bad. So. 2013 Raton. You remember Stephen Blair?
I do. Sleepy
Gator.
Yep.
So he tells me this story that because remember, Raton was real filthy, dirt just flying everywhere.
Yep.
And he had a trigger failure. And do you remember that?
I was right next to him when it happened.
Yeah, so tell me that story. I want to hear that from you.
Well, if I can remember, he had to disappear and go and fix his trigger and then come back. And I can't really remember what else happened, but he still shot really well once he'd fixed the trigger. Did he borrow a trigger?
No, he went. So his trigger failed, right? Because, I mean, that's just so filthy in Raton. And we're laying on the ground, right? He said he got up. He went to his string.
And he was in the middle of his string, wasn't it?
Middle of the string.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
He said he got up. He went to go fix it. I think he just squirted some lighter fluid, just flushed it, and it started working again. But it took a good 5 minutes, maybe longer. He came back, put the gun back on his rest and everything, and started looking. And he shot, and he hit a 10 or an X, and then just kept going. And he said when he was done, you looked at him and said, that was the most impressive thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was. It was.
He just came back 5 minutes later.
I mean, just to touch on the dirt and the dust. I mean, when I got back from return, both my barrels were absolutely fried, and it wasn't the round count because they were new barrels. It was a load of it's sort of semi like volcanic sort of grit, and must have got into the barrel. But they were toast. They wouldn't shoot 3/4 MOA. They were done. So that was two rifles. That was an expensive trip, and I galled a lug as well. So yeah, you got to know. And again, that's if we'd have known how bad that was, we maybe would have made some difference. I don't know what we would have done differently, but
yeah. Well, Gary, thank you so much for your time. I know this is going to help a lot of people. Just the mental aspect of what happens when you win a world championship, and it's really hard to maintain to place well at every match. It's a lot of work.
It's impossible. I mean, you can be there, and you know, the older you get, the more knowledge you have, and the more you you know what works, but occasionally you're going to have a bad day, and you come off the point like loads of people do and think, what about golf? You know, I could have probably done a better job, but yeah, then you get home and the addiction kicks in again, and you think, right, I'm going to fix it. I'm gonna do better. But I think any advice would be to people is just try and be consistent. Don't get too severe. And sadly, there's not many guys left from our 2009 World Championship win team. A lot of guys have sort of moved on doing other things. There's probably only 3 or 4 guys that I still see now that are still on the scene. So people do come and go, and new blood comes in, and they're keen, and long may it continue. Because F class as a sport is a fantastic. I mean, it's up there. It's the leading edge. It's the Formula One of rifle accuracy. And I know bench rest is, but F class is a bit of everything as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yep. So every time I do an interview, I ask for them to nominate someone that I should reach out to and interview.
Wow.
Who would you say, you know what, you need to talk to this person? Who would that be?
Who would that be?
Someone you would like for me to interview.
I tell you what, you ought to interview Alan Warner. That's who you ought to interview.
Yep. Okay.
Because he's been around for a long time, and he's been coached for Palmer, and he's shot F class, and he's still making good stuff. He's into the ELR stuff now. He probably won't talk. He'd probably be too shy, but
I'll try.
He's a good guy, and we've known each other for a long, 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 long time. So I know Dan, his son, is doing a lot of the front end stuff, but he's still in the background there, and he's made some radical changes and done some development and stuff. He's an really interesting guy. So I don't know of anybody else as far as
that's
put a pin on. So
Alan Warner for sure. I think that would be a good interview.
Sorry, Alan, I didn't mean it.
All right, Gary. Again, thank you so much for the interview. I know this is going to help a lot of people.
I hope it does, and good to talk to you, Eric.
All right, Gary. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tonight I'm feeling me, gonna make an ugly scene. Tonight I'm feeling